Let's look at the sidewalks, which is a very important part or a non-existent part of the current bridge, really.
Our opinion is that you have to have a wide sidewalk, at least 12 feet. That's what's on the Brooklyn Bridge. It's over 100 years old and it's 12 feet wide. We think at least we ought to be able to do that. The plan for the Longfellow as it now stands will wind up with 7.5 feet. And you can see on the left how very narrow it looks. There's not room enough for runners and walkers and wheelchairs and strollers and tourists, slow walkers and people with canes. Just not enough room.
Yeah, well, I think it's actually quite extreme. I think somebody who tries to cross the Longfellow Bridge with a baby stroller has to actually carry the baby stroller over the what do you call that? The
median, or
not the median.
Oh, it's a crash barrier.
You have to go off the sidewalk,
right,
because the lamp posts are such that you cannot stay on the sidewalk. And for a person in a wheelchair, you cannot cross the bridge right now.
The bridge is not accessible to wheelchairs.
It's not accessible,
right,
which is illegal.
Illegal, absolutely illegal.
Which is illegal.
We've actually seen runners go out in the street as well, so it's a totally dangerous situation for everybody.
Yeah, and I cross that bridge often on my bicycle, and the cars easily go 50 miles an hour,
right,
because they have 2 lanes. They see all this open territory, so they race over the bridge,
right,
and then the bicycle lane often has the sand and the debris, so that there's very little space left,
right,
for the bicyclists.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's look at what kind of other options there are for sidewalks and lighting and so on.
Well, we think that you ought to have a crash barrier between the pedestrians and the vehicles and bicycles, and that the crash barrier offers you a perfect opportunity to add lighting for the sidewalk and for the bicyclists. This has not been done on this bridge, and here's an example of what it could look like. This is the Freedom Bridge in St. Paul, Minnesota, recently built, and it shows the kind of thing we're talking about. Yeah,
but so they have the bicyclists even.
They're on the outside.
On the
outside
protected. I don't think that's quite yet what you. That's
no,
not what you're proposing.
Let's look at the next slide. I'll show you how that works.
But that is, we have that situation of a particular bike lane in some places. We have very few places in Boston or Cambridge where there is a buffer zone.
That's right, and we think there should be one here because cars do go fast, but also we have an opportunity here to create a really, really good bike facility with a buffer to keep it from bikes from getting hit by cars.
Yeah. And we are very fortunate in Cambridge to have a wonderful team of planners that actually think of bicycling. And Boston is trying to catch up, but Cambridge has always been a leader in bicycling, and can be very proud of what they accomplish.
Right, definitely.
And one effort that the Charles River Conservancy is also working on with Walk Boston and the other partners to Livable Streets and Mass Bike is, as the bridges are being restored, particularly the Western Avenue, River Street and Anderson Bridge, that the path along the water can go underneath the bridges, so that people don't have to fight the traffic at every intersection. Mm-hmm. And we already have that in Cambridge at the Elliott Bridge. So that will be a great improvement. Fortunately, with the Longfellow Bridge, it's possible to stay on the water's edge. So let's look now at what the options are for improving that bridge.
Now this slide shows that the traffic on the bridge has been going down for almost 10 years. And we think that because of that, one vehicle lane across the bridge in each direction will be enough to handle the traffic. The traffic is stable. It does not show any growth. We think that it probably will stay that way, and therefore we can take advantage of it, in effect. So we reduce the traffic across the bridge somewhat by just having one lane in each direction. But if you go to the next slide, you can show you that what we're providing, if you see in this drawing, is not just one lane for the traffic. If there's an emergency, the traffic can pull over into the bike lane and its buffer temporarily and either get stalled there if they don't have gas, or let an ambulance or a fire truck pass by. There's plenty of room for that emergency situation. So we're not impeding traffic that way. We're not impeding emergency traffic.
Yeah, yeah. Now, explain a little bit more what the plans are. So there will be a bicycle lane, and the bicycle lane will be separated from the driving lane. Will that be painted, or will there be a different surface, or is that still to be determined?
I think it's going to be just painted. Now, we may add something later, but for the moment it's going to be painted. This is somewhat of a new experience for Boston and Cambridge. Don't have something quite like this just yet. So we want people to get used to it before we embellish it.
Yeah.
We could probably use a little safety precautions for bicycles, but that will have to be thought about.
Yeah, and there have been now studies in New York that whenever bike lanes are introduced, suddenly the number of bicyclists goes up very rapidly.
Right.
That is quite exciting.
We think that will happen here too.
Yeah. Now you have a picture here of the bridge as it is now, and
if you look here, you can see the very narrow sidewalk with the shadows on it from the railing of the bridge, the decorative railing.
Yeah.
And you can see the little curb that Renata was talking about, which people have to jump over if they're trying to pass people because the sidewalk is so narrow. So we hope to widen that sidewalk out, put in a bike lane, help the transit, and still provide for cars and emergency vehicles to cross the bridge. And we do that by the next slide, which is our proposed improvement, which shows a rather vast improvement over the narrow sidewalk that you just saw.
Yeah, and in case you just joined us in this program, this is the Charles River Conservancy Parkland show, and these shows are then go onto YouTube. So if you missed the beginning of the show, or you want to see other shows with elected officials, or about swimming, or about planting daffodils, or about the skate park, any of our projects, you can find those on YouTube. But let's go back to this wonderful image. I think I congratulate Walk Boston for creating this vision. This is a place I would definitely take all my out-of-town guests to experience Boston.
It's going to be a very special place. We suggest that they reinstall the old lights that were there when the bridge was built in 1907, and that they provide some place for people to sit. We think that there ought to be that, and people can take in the view. It's one of the best views in the whole city, by far. And therefore there will be reasons for people to cross the bridge, either local people or tourists, and people should be comfortable in doing it, both in space and in the case of need to sit, to be able to do it.
Well, it's wonderful to have an advocacy group like Walk Boston, and I know you work just as hard in Cambridge, so it's really, you don't limit yourself to Boston. Bob, could you tell us a little bit what else Walk Boston does? I think this Longfellow Bridge is a very big and current project, but you have many other projects.
We do. We have, for instance, the Safe Routes to Schools programs throughout the state. We've been involved with that program for a long time now. We were the first in New England to have a Safe Routes to Schools program.
So Safe Route to Schools, that means to make it easier and safer for parents and children to walk to school.
Right, yeah, or ride their bike, either one. But at the moment there is a tendency for people to drive their kids to school, even if it's a short distance. So we're trying to change that because the kids need the exercise. And it has been said that a great proportion of the morning traffic jams are caused by parents driving their children to school.
Yeah. So explain